Hi, I'm Jill from Homeschool for Real Life, and I'm here to share with you another math game that my family enjoys. We love to use educational games in our homeschool, and also I just think they're fun to play on a weekend or anytime. Some people may disagree, but that's what I think. So another math game that my family enjoys is Prime Climb from Math for Love. So this is not my favorite math game. I shared that one with you in another video. It's right here, Outnumbered. That's my favorite math game. So if you want to know more about that one, check out my other video. But Prime Climb is an excellent math game, and a lot of people would probably say this is their favorite. The reason it's not my favorite is because it really is a straight math game. Like, there's no fooling your kids with this one. When you play this game, you are doing math. It's really an innovative, intelligent game. There's some real genius to how the game board is designed, and this game can teach you a lot about numbers. So a huge part of what we're doing when we are teaching our kids mathematics or helping them, facilitating their learning, is getting that mathematical thinking going. So learning math rules and how to do addition and subtraction and all those things, that's a piece of math. But really deeper, more foundational is their understanding of math and their ability to think about numbers and manipulate them and look at them from different angles. And this game is excellent for that. So from a math teaching perspective, this game is phenomenal. You can do all sorts of things with it, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes. But as far as just playing a game, you know, it's fun. My son actually does choose this game, but it really is just a straight math game. My other issue with this game is that as you're playing, you are doing a lot of math, but you kind of reach a point in the game where all you're doing is adding. And really, you're pretty much adding single-digit numbers to double-digit numbers. So for me, that's a little bit disappointing for gameplay, that so much of our time is spent just adding, 83 plus 7. Like, that's great, but it's not all that exciting for math practice for me. So that's a little bit disappointing in gameplay. But if you go beyond just playing and ask questions and do some thinking challenges, it's fantastic. So let's take a look at the game and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here is the game board that you get with Prime Climb. So as you can see, it's colorful, it's kind of cool because you're moving in this spiral. It's just a really pleasing, like visually pleasing game board. So the pieces that you're using, each player, you have enough pieces for 4 players. Each player will choose a color, and you'll use 2 pawns of one color. So I've seen some complaints about these maybe not being real robust pieces, but they're fairly rigid, and I think I understand the reason for these. It's so that if you put it on a number, you can still see the number that's underneath. That's actually pretty important for this game, that you and other players can see what number you're on, and you can think about how that number relates to everything else. You can see the numbers other players are on. So I think these are very purposeful in their design, that you can see right through them, see what's underneath. So those don't bother me. I feel like they're excellent pieces. Now if you sit on them or step on them, yeah, they're gonna crack. So just don't do that. So you've got those pieces, and then you have these 10-sided dice. You have 2 of those, which are also colorful and color coordinated with the game. You can see like 3 is green, 7 is purple, 9 is green, 1 is gray, 8 is orange. So you can see the numbers that are on here. 6 is green and orange, right? They're color coordinated with what they look like on the board. And those colors are very important. We'll talk more about those in just a minute. The other thing this game comes with are these Prime Climb cards. There's a deck of Prime Climb cards, And these are kind of advantage cards, usually. Now, sometimes it might be a disadvantage to you, but typically these are something you want to draw. So this is an example of one that would have to be performed right away on your turn when you draw it. Advance to the pawn nearest you, send them back to start. Other ones are marked as keepers. This one allows you to add or subtract your pawn by 4. So this one you cannot play on the turn when you draw it. You have to save it for later. And so those keepers can become very valuable, especially at the end of the game. So let's talk about how to play so you know what I'm talking about. So every single player is going to start with both of their pawns on 0. So we'll just play with yellow for a minute. Then you're going to roll both dice on your turn. I got a 5 and a 6. So I can apply those two in any way I wish, but I have to apply them to my pawns and the spaces they're on. So I cannot like add these to make 11 right off the bat, right? I can't do 6 minus 5 is 1 and use a 1 exactly. You can kind of, but not applied in that way. So I have to look, I'm on 0. So the only way these are going to help me in this case, since I'm starting at 0, is if I add 1, so add 5, move up to the 5, and then multiply by 6, I can get all the way around to 30. So I've gotten that pawn to 30. I could alternatively have moved one pawn to 6 and one to 5. So either way, I'm using up my two numbers. I have to use them both. And my goal is to move in this spiral all the way around until I land exactly on 101. And when I land exactly on 101, I get to remove that pawn. It has made it. My goal is to get both pawns all the way around to 101. The first player to get both pawns to 101 and off the board wins. So as I'm moving around the board, I can bump other players or be bumped by them. And I can also draw those prime climb cards anytime I land on a prime number. So all of these numbers that are in red circles are primes. Now that only happens above 10. You'll notice none of the prime numbers that are below 10 are red because they are color-coded to be involved in all these other spaces. So prime numbers above 10 are all encircled in red. So that's one thing you can really easily learn from this game. What are your prime numbers? As you get used to this game board and which numbers you land on and get to draw a prime climb card, you will know what your prime numbers are. So it's really good practice for that. So let's say our blue player is up. Both pawns are in 0. This time we have a 9 and a 7. So let's see. Those aren't very good for bumping. Let's say I had, let's go with a 9 and a 6. Okay. So what I could do is I can use the 6 to come up here and bump that pawn back to 0. Now I cannot continue moving this pawn with that 9. Like I can't go, okay, now times 9 if I want to bump this. Because in that case, I would just do, okay, times 6 or plus 6 gets me to 6, times 9 gets me up to 54, and that's my turn. But if I end this pawn on 6, I can bump this one back, use the 9 for the other pawn, and move up here. So on my turn, as I continue moving around the board, I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide with these numbers. Like let's say, all right, let's say I had been on 42 and I rolled this 6 and 9. So I cannot multiply this by 6 or 9 because that would be larger than 101. And that's illegal. Can't do that in this game. So I could just add both of these. Now, I also have the option of moving this pawn, but if I'm wanting to use both on this one, I would just add them. And if this one, say, had already been moved off the board, I would only have the choice of moving this one, right, with both numbers. So if I just add them, I will have 15. 6 plus 9 is 15. So 42 plus 15, 42 plus 10 is 52, plus 5 more, that would get me to 57. But I could get a little trickier here. I could go ahead and divide 42 by 6, which would take me back to 7, which seems not very helpful. But now I can multiply by that 9, and I can actually move all the way up to 63. So by dividing and going back, I was able to use these numbers to actually move farther than had I just kept adding, right? So if you are down in that area of the game, if you use division, sometimes it can help you wherever you are. If you're in, say, up to the 30s, you can be multiplying some. But when you get in these bigger numbers, if you don't roll something that is a factor of this number, so you are able to divide and move back, which often you don't, you just find yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you can even find yourself having to go backward and then forward. You reach a point in this game where you can't really do very much except for just go forward by adding. And we made a rule in our house because I was tired of watching my kids just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You cannot hop and count like that. You have to do 84 plus 5 in your head, then move. Just at least we were getting that addition practice. But that is the issue that I have with this game, is it feels like a lot of times in gameplay, all we're doing is just hopping and adding to try and get up to 101. But like I said, it's a visually masterful mathematical picture here. So each number down here, each prime number, is given a color. So those colors are indicating what numbers these numbers are a part of for the rest of the game. So each number is basically displaying its prime factorization. Each of these numbers displayed is made of prime numbers. So for example, if you look at 75, it's blue, blue, green. 5 and 5 and 3. 5 times 5 is 25, times 3 is 75. If I divide 75 by 3, taking away the green, I'm going to be left with 2 blues, 2 5s. 5 times 5 is 25. So 75 divided by 3 is 25. Down here, 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. We have 3 orange sections in it. So this can help your kids see factors and multiples. It can help them see multiplication. It can help them see what prime factorization really is. We talked about it can help them learn prime numbers. And it can even help a child who's clever enough to pick up on these colors play this game before they really even understand multiplication and division. If they can see that 14 is purple and orange. So 14 is 2 times 7, orange times purple. If I divide 14 by purple, by 7, I get 2, the orange. If I divide it by 2, I get 7, the purple. So there are an incredible array of relationships that you can visually see here. Now for me, it's a little overwhelming to take it in all at once, especially in this spiral. So they have provided this card, which I think is really helpful if you want to just take a look at this mathematically. So all the numbers go across, it's a grid 1 to 100 in rows of 10. And you can take a look at them there. They've also, on the other side, put in essentially a multiplication table. So 3 times 4 comes down here to green and to orange to make 12, which is 3 times 2 times 2. The orange goes back to 2. So you have to think about what color the prime number is coming from, right? So 3 times 4 is green and 2 orange multiplied, which gives me green and 2 orange. 3 times 2 times 2 is 12. So looking for some patterns in here, I'm kind of breaking this down. One thing that they suggest, if you go to their website, mathforlove.com, and I think it's .com, and you look up the Prime Climb game, there are some links you can click on there. There's Teaching with Prime Climb. They give you some suggestions. And one of them is starting with just these top 2 rows and having them, if you make these assigned colors constant, right? Like you have to use 2 is orange, 3 is green, 7 is purple, then 5 is blue, sorry. Then you can determine what all these other numbers should look like based on how those numbers multiply to make them. They have a blank page with all the numbers 1 to 100 that you can have your child color in. And so the potential here for really getting a good understanding of multiplication and the patterns and which numbers are factors and multiples and primes is huge. There's really huge potential here. The other thing that they suggest is that you use this as kind of like math warm-ups. Math, little brain teasers, things to get you thinking, right? So let's say I just put a blue here on this number, 86, right? And then I roll the dice and I say, okay, what are the possible numbers that I could land on based on this roll? And if I choose something that has a factor of that, like I can see that it's orange and red, so that tells me 2. It's an even number, so obviously 2 is a factor there, right? You can ask questions about what possible numbers could I land on? Could I bump anybody, right? So where could I bump somebody off? And we can be placing some more of these, right? Is it possible to bump anyone? There are also questions like, if you have 2 pawns at 0, what's the fewest number of rolls it could take you to get both pawns to 101 and off? There are more complicated ways to play, ways to change it up if you get used to playing this. If your kids get too good at it, you can play starting at 101 and moving down to 0. You can make it so that you have to go all the way up to 101 and then back down to 0. You can shorten the game if you just have each player using 1 pawn, getting 1 pawn to 101. So there are ways to adapt the game to make it shorter or longer and also just different. But really, you want to go look at their site and focus on these questions because you need to be a little more purposeful than I was just picking 86 here. But choosing something like 36 that has a lot of good factors, right? And maybe you roll a 3 and a 6 or a 9 and asking them in that case, what's the highest number I could get to, the lowest number I could get to, how many different numbers could I possibly land on starting at 36 with these 2 numbers rolled. So if your children are willing to engage in some mathematical discussion with you and take some time to really investigate this game and think through these challenges, it can be very educational. It's going to be educational no matter what. And if they can really interpret, either in the spiral or in this pattern or in this one, how these numbers show the relationships here and how this relates to factors, multiples, and primes, the game is well worth it. They also have online, if you'd rather not buy the game completely, they also have actually the game board just that you can print off, and then you have to, and they have cards I think you can print as well, and then you just have to get some pawns and 10-sided dice, or you could even make a 10-section spinner, and you can play that way. I think they have that for $15, but in my opinion, well, I don't know. I mean, because having them color the board is really, really beneficial. But it's so pretty like this. It's fun to have the actual game. So you can make your decision on that. But that's basically it. So you're basically moving through this spiral and using math to get yourself to 101 and bump off other players. And I will say one thing about bumping. I am not a fan of bumping in most games. Because when you've made it all the way up here, and somebody comes and they bump you off and you're back to 0, that can just feel really deflating and frustrating and maybe create some angst between players. But in this game, it's actually kind of fun. If you can convince your kids to try and not mind too much, the thing is, in this game, it's so easy to get back. It is not hard to get up high. As long as you're not consistently rolling, ones and twos, which can happen, but it's unlikely that you'll roll too many, right? So usually you can very quickly get right back into the game and it's not a big deal. So with my own kids, I had to kind of encourage them, let's not get mad when we get bumped in this game, and let's not feel bad doing it to people, because it's a really fun part of the gameplay and easily overcome. So that helped the game be a little more fun for us when I could encourage them, because my kids are very kind and compassionate and don't want to bump each other off. But it really is a fun part of it. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you've played this game, and if you have any mathematical ideas, ways to really get your kids thinking and make this game beneficial. Thank you so much for joining me for this review of Prime Climb. It's an excellent math game, and if you are ready to teach your kids and get them thinking about math, it's a really good tool for that. I hope you enjoy it. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think or if you've played it, and be sure to like, subscribe, check out my other videos. Thank you.